Phoebe rocking out to the intro.
Well, it's a good intro. I like it. I hope our viewers like it too. Hello, everybody, for tuning into two loony libertarians here today. Today we're talking about the loony libertarian party. We're libertarians, but we're not party hacks. We'll have you know. We may call ourselves libertarians, but that don't mean we attribute ourselves to the party of the libertarians. I, as you will know, am a wonderful British woman, and this is my wonderful co-host Leslie, who is from the Cascadia region, which is a long way away from me.
And it's on fire. It's on fire.
How are they doing?
The West Coast is on fire. This happens in the summer. It's fire season. So we're fortunately safe. We're about 150 miles away from anything, but that can change rapidly because I live in the middle of a bunch of trees.
Miles away from civilization entirely. Not just, this, but I thought it was just civilization in general you were 150 miles away from.
Kind of, sorta. Kind of, sorta. I tucked myself into a bunch of trees and stuff. I mean, essentially, I'm about 45 minutes away from real civilization, so I can get there if need be. But yeah, it's.
And then you're about 150 miles away from loony civilization.
Yeah. No, actually, the real loony civilization up in Portland that's about 300. So. I made sure I was far enough away from that, but this is the time of year where we have all of our go bags and everything in the car, just in case, we have to bundle up the dog and get the hell out of Dodge. So,
as I say, I'd like to, on a more serious note, I'd like to express my condolences, and I'm sure your condolences too, to the individuals who lost their town in Canada recently over the wildfires. Because wildfires are serious. They
are.
Make laugh and jokes about them here, but
they move. They move, and fortunately, we haven't had a lot of wind today. We don't know if that's going to hold, because when that happens, just all hell breaks loose. We're just.
I say, as a Brit, we don't have the danger of wildfires, but we do have flash flooding. And summertime is where we get our flash flooding. And as you'll know, a few days ago, it was sandbags at my door because the flash flooding was here. So whilst flash flooding may not be quite as dangerous as the wildfires, we do have them in the UK.
And I read that Brian May, hello from Queen,
well,
got my Queen t-shirt on. He had his house went.
Yeah. So yes, that was a slightly somber way to start, but we're going to go on to some fairly ridiculous things now. Today, our show, we are doing a compare and contrast, shall we say. And Leslie and I have had some giggles over this one, and Leslie and I have had some moments where we've gone
facepalm. Yeah, it's like you. What?
Today we are comparing the Libertarian Party of the United Kingdom and the Libertarian Party of the United States. Where do we?
Well, tell you what, since I don't know, it sounds like the LP of the UK is an individual's personal campaign as opposed to
an actual political party.
In the US, well, yeah, we've been around for a while, since 1971. So we've had time to go from that group of five to a party.
You did have one of the Koch brothers run for you once, which was always interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, how does the LP in the UK differ, from the US?
It's what we would call in the UK a minor political party. So they stand perennial candidates, but they lose their deposits in elections. And a deposit, for those of you who don't know, is the sum of money you have to put up at a national or regional level election to actually put up a candidate, because somebody has to cover the costs of democracy. And in the UK, it's deemed, well, if you're just going to stand, please pay some money towards this. But everyone has to do that, and if you have enough support, then you get your money back.
And who funds that? Is that funded by
the party themselves? Have to pay for
the party themselves.
The party themselves has to pay the deposit.
Okay.
And then if the party does well enough in an election, they get their money back. If you don't do well enough in an election, then the government swallow it and say, well, that was the administration costs that we're covering.
Okay.
Not really the greatest of system, because it does discourage smaller parties from being able to stand, but
sure,
it is a way of helping to pay the bills without burdening the taxpayer. So if you want to take part directly in the election, you have to do that. It doesn't discourage our wonderful fringe politicians like Lord Buckethead from standing and Count Binface.
Don't hold back.
I should have got some, some free images of these people so I could throw them up on the screen, but the video just come to me. So we have Lord Buckethead, we have Count Binface, we have Give Me Back Elmo, we have the Monster Raving Loony Party, we have the Church of the Militant Elvis Party.
What? Please.
Church of the Militant Elvis Party because capitalism made Elvis a drug addict and fat and is the reason he died.
Is that real?
That's their platform. Because capitalism made Elvis fat, turned him into a drug addict, and that's why he died. The Church of the Militant Elvis Party.
Okay, I'm not quite as embarrassed about U.S. politics anymore.
But yes,
giving us some redemption.
Those were just 4 people who stood against Boris Johnson at the last election. Was Count Binface, Lord Buckethead, Give Me Back Elmo.
Dear God.
The Church of the Militant Elvis Party. So yes, we have our fair share of British eccentricities, shall we say?
Okay. And again, like I said, I don't feel so bad.
The Libertarian Party aren't one of these parties that consider themselves to be part of the eccentricity. But as a libertarian, somebody who considers herself to be a classic libertarian in the political theory sense, and somebody who claims to ascribe to be able to tell the difference between different political theories, sees different political theories melding them way into the manifesto of the Libertarian Party of 2019. So that's where we are with the Libertarian Party in the UK. They don't have any members of parliament. They don't, as far as I know, have any local councillors. And they haven't been around since 1971. They've been around since 2000 and something. I'll just double check.
2008.
2008.
From what which is, in political terms, that's brand new.
It's brand new. Considering the Conservative Party in its current form have been around since the 1850s and the Labour Party since the 1920s, and if you go back to the Liberal Democrats, who are probably the oldest political party still going today, they've been around since the Liberal Party, since it was the Liberals, the Whigs, and the Peelites in the 1700s. So we're talking parties that have been around for a very long time in the UK. So it's not like these parties have just come from nowhere. So this is where we are. In my opinion, the Libertarian Party is, this is the UK version, is a bit, how can we put it, undergoing teething problems as to what it means by libertarianism.
It's funny because when we were talking about it earlier, you were going over some of these points with me. It sounds like there's a couple of different problems here. It sounds like on one hand, it wasn't well thought out, or it was overly thought and comes into conflict with itself in many points.
Oh yeah, completely. It not only comes into contradiction with itself, but it comes into contradiction with the person who's written it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm all for parties putting out nice, in-depth manifestos, and reading through the Libertarian Party manifesto, it's quite nice. It's one of the few manifestos that I've seen which is fairly easy to read. It sets out what it wants to do. And it has what it purports to be costed out spendings. There were some issues with what it said, it's unfortunately, in my opinion, melding libertarianism with nationalism on a few parts. It has a lot of dense language that even I, as somebody who's studied politics, don't quite understand. And there's parts of it where it goes about creating more government, which, as a libertarian, I don't want more government. I want less government.
Right, which also doesn't mean, because what a lot of people mistake about it is like they equate libertarianism with anarchism, and that's not it. Government is necessary.
In some cases, government is necessary, but
Yes,
you need to have government that is set out in a way that is not for the benefit of itself. And unfortunately, the Libertarian Party in the UK does use some language which is associated with this kind of we're doing it for the self. So when it talks about things like defence policy, it talks about things like duty and honour, which are nice things if you're a nationalist. If you believe in the state, those are nice things if you're a nationalist. If they had chosen wording like to prevent the invasion or enhance the defence from enemies outside of the state,
right.
I've no problem with that. But it's casual use of what is nationalist language, which I have a real problem with. And there's a line I'm going to read out here for the purposes of the viewers, but I'd like your take on it. I know I've read this section to you before, but I'm only going to read a small section of it. And it says, a libertarian government will prioritise defence in conjunction with the aim of avoiding foreign entanglement, except insofar as required by our mutual defence pact with the other members of NATO, which has proved to be a guarantor of peace in Europe since 1945. As party policy is firmly to leave the European Union, a libertarian government would not require servicemen to be part of a European army.
Okay, word salad.
It is.
First of all,
it is a lot of word salad there. So, what is your first take when I read that to you?
Okay, again, trying to suss it out. It sounds like on one hand, you're going to dedicate your soldiery to an entity beyond your country.
Yes.
Okay. Which becomes problematic because you step outside of that limited space of the defense of. So you could be called up to go fight over here, there, wherever that entity deems they want to go. Bad.
And NATO doesn't have some of the nicest regimes that are members of it.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination.
You have the current government of Turkey, for example, as a member of NATO.
Right.
And there are a lot of problems with democracy and human rights in Turkey at the moment.
Absolutely.
So if, for example, if Turkey and one of its neighbours, say, I don't know, Iran, got in trouble with each other, as it currently stands, the United States would be mandated to go and attack Iran. And so would we, as NATO members. Do we really want to be involved in an entanglement between Turkey and Iran?
No. As here, we're recently trying to pull out of a 20-year conflict in Afghanistan that never should have happened in the first place.
Well, in my opinion, Afghanistan could have been done a lot more successfully if America had taken it seriously to start with. America had the military might to go in and overwhelm the country, but it did it very piecemeal, did it very small scale. The only way how you can do certain things was it was going to have to be a shock and awe, get the terrorist that you wanted, and then get out.
Right.
Yes, I understand the Taliban regime was an abhorrent regime.
Still
I
is.
understand that it is still an abhorrent regime. And I understand that the Taliban in control of Kabul and other things was awful. And they did give safe harbour to bin Laden and friends. But the US and NATO, as a result, got entangled in there for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still trying to disentangle ourselves now, 20 years later.
Yeah.
It should never have lasted 20. This is longer than the Vietnam War. This is longer than the Boer War.
Combined.
This is longer than
World War II.
This is longer than a lot of wars have been going on. And these aren't frozen conflicts. These are active conflicts going on today in Afghanistan. So there's active fighting. It's not like the frozen war in the Korean Peninsula.
Right.
This is an active war where people are dying on a daily basis. And I understand that there's going to be people in our audience that are going to be turning around to us and saying, yes, it's one of those things where you have to prioritize human rights for everybody as opposed to looking after your own limited self. And I can fully get behind that. And that's a debate to be had amongst individuals. But we are digressing.
Yeah.
But what this, getting back to the original point, the Libertarian Party in the UK have committed itself to actions like that.
All right.
With the wording of what it has said.
Which is no. I mean, that's not what the American Libertarian Party espouses at all. It's nation building. It's not something that we adhere to. Now, where it comes down to, like you were saying, in terms of human rights, we've gotten away from, Congress declaring war. We get into these little skirmishes, and it's like, well, it's not really a war. So therefore, we can sidestep that part just a bit because it isn't a war. Yeah, it actually is. I'm sorry.
It's what they lovingly call, it's a police action.
Right. And that goes back, they slid that one in during Vietnam. It's like, just a police action. It's not a war. Let's just call it that. No.
But there are other contradictions within the manifesto of the Libertarian Party. So at one point it calls for the abolition of the inheritance tax. Or for the abolition of the inheritance tax. But later, it goes on to talk about mortgages being heritable. I'm thinking, where the hell is Phoebe going with this? But later in that same paragraph, it says, a mortgage will only become heritable if estate and inheritance duties can be paid by the estate. You're abolishing inheritance tax.
Right.
You're abolishing the estate tax, as it's known in America. And then you're saying this part of your manifesto is contingent on this being a thing. So, and it carries on with contradictions like this throughout the document. And my favourite one is that he doesn't understand what it actually means. And I say he here because I'm ascribing the document to being written by one person here.
Yeah.
Because at points it switches from I to we to he to she throughout the document. Which is very weird wording.
Right. And I'm just trying to see here, does it, in the wonderful page that you gave me, does it list any other individuals? Is there a committee? Is it just this one dude?
Which is, unfortunately, what I think it is. It's got the legal stuff at the bottom.
I'm looking for that.
Where it says editorial lead at the bottom. Yes, okay.
Right.
So it looks like there may be two people that have done this.
Yeah, I'm looking at the...
Andrew and Adrian appear to be the two people that have done it.
And
we're not advocating anybody here go and try and contact these people or anything. We're here trying to make a commentary and a criticism based on our opinions here. If anybody goes out and does anything in our name, we disown you immediately.
Right.
Please don't write to them saying you've listened to us here and they said this. We don't speak for them. We're only speaking in our own individual capacities here.
Right.
But
I would think a party being started, I mean, because, getting off the ground is never simple. But 2008, you better have more than a ma and pa shop. That's a fair amount of time to get
You've had 13 years now. 11 years when this
Move a
manifesto was
little,
written.
progress a little more, move a little faster.
Yeah, so you've had 11 years when this manifesto was published at the last general election. But there is other elements of it which fly in the face of my personal opinion of libertarianism, whereas it talks about abolishing certain railways and replacing them with coachways. In my opinion, that flies in the face of what libertarianism is, because this is the state saying, well, we want you to have this, not this.
Right.
Which, it's not the way that it's done.
No.
In my opinion, it should be, you can choose what you have here.
Mm-hmm.
Just because something's already here, and you don't like it as the person who's writing it, doesn't mean that you get to turn around and say, we have this. Because the document talks about sovereign people, it talks about lower levels of burdens upon people and increasing choice. But what it does do, in certain aspects, is it imposes certain things on the populace which appear to be at the whim of the writer.
Mm-hmm. Pet project.
Yeah.
I don't like X. I prefer Y, so you should like Y too.
I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not going to give you a choice.
Right.
I'm going to say it. And I'm going to give you my reasons that I believe. I'm not actually going to give you evidence. I'm just going to give you a few reasons off the top of my head. And the argument is very odd, because we will abolish railways because we want to install coachways, because coachways are better for the environment and better for people.
And no study, no examination of the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Just an assertion.
And yeah, he rightly talks about debt of Network Rail, rightly talks about trying to reduce that. But that's not a reason to simply turn around and remove the ability for people to say, yes, I want these coachways, yes, I want the railways. Well, maybe we could have both, or maybe we should have neither.
Right. Especially if you're talking about something so vast as a rail system.
Yeah.
That, I mean, chucking that out is huge. I mean, it's a destruction of a lot of work and progress that spans. I mean, do you just start ripping up tracks? Is that
in the 1960s in the UK? And that's basically what he's advocating again. He said, well, we'll keep the trunk routes.
Okay.
So we'll keep the arterial lines between the major cities, but that'll be it. So that we can then lower costs. Okay.
Still, I'd like to see a financial study before you launch into something that massive.
He has a financial table, but he doesn't give sources on where it's come from. It just is plonked there.
No, that's not how that stuff works.
It's just plonked there. And it gets very confusing as to where he's actually coming from with it. So, whilst I'm in favour of professional-looking, glossy manifestos, the manifesto itself can't contradict itself and be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the manifesto, from my reading of it, is a defence hawk's wet dream, because he wants bigger military, likes his military, and within the liking of the military feeds in a form of mild nationalism.
Okay, problematic, definitely.
And it gives off this strange and bizarre dissonance between certain elements of it. So it talks about, as we said, coachways, railways. Why are you getting involved in that?
Yeah.
Why are you getting involved in the minutiae of this? Why aren't you saying we will establish structures to allow people to decide for themselves?
Right. It's a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
Is what it appears to be.
And I am not a member of the Libertarian Party of the UK, and having read their manifesto, I shan't be imparting any of my money into their bank account.
Yeah. I'm not a card-carrying member anymore. I basically pulled away a little bit, probably back in 2016. there were just some decisions that were made, things that were happening within the American Libertarian Party, kind of nutcases. Vermin Supreme, we've talked about Vermin before. Vermin Supreme, very brilliant man, has a weird shtick that puts a level of lunacy onto the party that I'm not all for gatekeeping, and it's like, well, you've only got to be this, and you can only be in if you're this. But allowing in strip teases at conventions, things like that, it hurts us.
It doesn't make you seem to be the most serious of individuals.
No. And we've gotten way past that. I mean, Libertarian Party of the 70s, 80s, more serious candidates that look like, yes, we can do something. We are really, really here to do this, to participate in government, to offer a better alternative, or as we perceive, a better alternative, different ideas. It's just digressed into weirdness, and I can't be part of that. I am a registered libertarian right now. Currently, in the U.S., I'm sure you're very aware because you guys are much more learned on our systems of government than we are in yours. I will change my party affiliation during primaries, depending on for the last election. I registered as a Republican, so I could vote in the Republican primaries on who I wanted to be that candidate, because I felt it was important. I mean, I knew the Democrats were going to do whatever they were going to do. There were some good choices there, but I really, really, really wanted to get in and say, no, I really don't want Donald Trump to be the candidate because he's frightening. And I will change depending on what's coming up. I mean, we don't know if he's going to run again in 2024. He's hinting at it. He made some pretty frightening statements. So I can't say because it involves campaign finance reform.
He's also not the youngest of people, though. He's also not got the healthiest diets. So he may say he wants to run in 2024.
Right.
His lifestyle may catch up with him. I'm not saying that Donald Trump's going to drop dead, but a lot of people that are following Donald Trump and a lot of people that also follow Joe Biden need to be aware that these are very old men running for very stressful political jobs, trying to do things that men 40 years younger than them struggle to do.
Honestly, I don't think Trump takes it serious enough to be stressed about it. I think he was more stressed about his social media platforms being shut down than he was what was actually going on in the country. But again, I will change my party affiliation because I am not so married, and we're going to get into this later, to the Libertarian Party, that it's me.
It's not a political ident.
No, it's identity politics, and like I said, we're going to get into that later. It's not something that I ascribe to. I don't agree with everything in the Libertarian platform. I would be worried if I did agree with everything in the platform.
Then it would be you.
And it's like, am I being objective? Am I really examining it, or am I getting to more of the emotional side of it? Yeah. Am I getting so hung up on, because, the main, I mean, to put libertarianism down in a nutshell for me is that do as you will, as long as you don't cause harm to somebody else. I mean, it's a very, very edited down version of do as you will, just don't screw with somebody else. I mean, and obviously there's a lot more to it than that. But that's when someone asks me about it, it's, instead of getting into a 2-hour discussion about what libertarianism is, it's like, this is my basic premise with it that I believe in. If you want to know more, go to the site and look at their platform and, decide for yourself. So, and speaking, I mean, in terms of that example, where we're going to, I'll talk about something that I disagree with. So rather than being just on board with everything, this is one of the platforms on energy and resources, and this is from the Libertarian website. While energy is needed to fuel a modern society, the government should not be subsidizing any particular form of energy. We oppose all government control of energy pricing, allocation, and production. Sounds good, basically. Where it fell down was the 2021 Texas power grid failure. completely, largely privatized systems. State officials, including Republican Governor Greg Abbott, initially blamed the outages on frozen wind turbines and solar panels, but inadequately winterized natural gas equipment was the primary cause. Also, Texas had isolated its power grid from two major national grids in an effort to avoid federal oversight and deregulate its energy sector, making it more difficult for the state to import electricity from other states. Now, while I think that was a problem in this instance, I don't think privatization would be a failure everywhere.
It's not a failure in the UK, for example. The energy grid in the UK works very well.
Exactly.
And the energy grid in the UK is a diverse energy sector, and it is a diverse array of energy production. We have a lot of wind power, we have natural gas power, we have oil power, coal less so. Natural gas, it is declining, but the renewables are coming online, and this is largely being driven by the market itself. Because the market itself is sitting there and saying, these things are running out. These things are getting more expensive. So gas prices per therm, the therm is the unit of gas which is sold on the wholesale market, in 2005 or 6, peaked at like 300% more in one day. And at that point, the market went, this is ridiculous. And so the providers themselves weren't prepared to keep paying that much money. They weren't prepared to allow what's been happening in Ukraine, with regards to its next door neighbor Russia saying on off because we like or dislike you. So there's been a move in the UK to diversify, and individuals themselves have been allowed to micro-generate for their own buildings. So the government deregulated the requirements to have planning permission for solar panels, deregulated the requirements to have wind turbines. You can have grey water collection in your property, and you don't need licenses for all this.
Oh, that's great.
You don't need licenses, you should just do it.
That's awesome.
So in the UK, you can just put solar panels up. You can just put a self-generating wind turbine. You can just put in grey water collection. You can just do it. And it works very well.
Right.
And we're a very small geographic area. And we're a very densely populated geographic area. And some of these things won't work if you've got things like flats or if you're in back-to-back terraces or something. But the fact that an individual can just go and do it, as opposed to going through and going through and going through and going through,
licenses, inspections,
has meant that it's just been done in the UK. Yes, there were government subsidies at the beginning when it came to solar panels and feed-in tariffs, but those were removed when it became ridiculous. I don't think they should have been there in the first place, because I believe the market would have made it so that people were being rewarded for putting money back into the system, putting energy back into the system with money, which is what still happens today, because I know people who have solar panels and their electricity meter goes backwards instead of forwards.
Right,
because
this can sell back to the grid.
Money into the
they're
getting, because you're selling back.
Right.
And this is the thing. So I don't know how it works in the US, but in the UK, you can feed back to the grid.
Yes, we can do that here.
And you just do it. So then someone comes along and reads your meter, or you have it read for you.
Right.
And if the numbers, and those numbers, the difference between the two numbers is the amount you get paid. There are certain elements of the energy market which I loathe. I hate standing charges, because what is a standing charge?
Yeah, that's...
You should just be allowed to pay for what you consume. I understand that they've got to build in some levels of profit, and they've got to build in some levels of infrastructure development. But when you're getting to the levels of standing charges, other things that are on your bill regardless, being more than the electricity that you've used,
yeah,
I understand that there are issues here. But the other thing that is fairly irritating is that you can't decouple yourself from the grid entirely.
Mm.
So you have to be part of the grid to get the benefit of being able to sell back to it. So you can't say, well, I produce 150% of my electricity needs. I'm going to sell 50% of it back. And I'll take myself off the grid for the rest of it. They say, no, you've got to be part of the grid to start with. So I'd like to see that element removed. But overall, I think that the feed-in tariffs and the other parts of the deregulation in the UK have been very beneficial and very successful in getting rid of a lot of the very slow paces of change that were happening when you reached the planning commission, and you had to be very dedicated and you needed to want it,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of people were prepared to go through.
Right. And we can, I mean, getting into alternative energy sources here, the inspections, the licensing, that's the part that kills it for quite a few people. And that's it, especially if they're talking about, well, we need to, get away from fossil. The thing that people don't understand about, example, here in Oregon, a lot of wind, a lot of, water, hydro generation, things like that. If we start sourcing the demand for electricity, just funneling it into that exclusively, people don't understand that even here in Oregon, where we have those abilities to tap into alternative, we still have to, people don't understand where electricity comes from. I for a brief period of time, I did some private security work guarding generators that produce electricity. Massive generators. Like it was a yard of like 12 of these things.
And they buzz.
Huge. They're like,
these things buzz, don't they?
Yeah. And people, if it's like, we got to get off fossil fuels. It's like, we got to get off fossil fuels. Well, then make it easier for people to do so. Kick off some of these. You got to have an inspection on this. You got to have a license for that.
I understand that there are some necessary requirements for safety. I understand that.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that we should just allow any Tom, Dick, or Sally to just go, oh, yes, I'm in the oil industry now.
Right.
Hey.
I've built my own private nuclear power plant in my backyard.
Right. I sourced my own plutonium for this one, Yeah,
Got it on Amazon.
Jeff, if you do that, we're coming for a cut. But we digress and we joke.
Right. Things within reason. And where do you draw these lines at? I wouldn't be so bad. It's like, okay, when I had I switched over my stove here from electric to propane. I hate cooking on electric. It's just the worst thing ever.
Ironically, I've gone from gas to induction, and I love my induction hob.
Oh, okay. I like to be able, if I'm on a high heat, to turn it down when I need to, not move it from here and do whatever. So I had to have gas lines put in, which was, pricey, but there was an inspection that came along with it that I didn't know about that didn't happen. So I have an illegal gas line, but did I say that out loud? No, it was inspected. Everything is good and it's fine. Just told on myself. But when
here's the question though.
Yeah.
What makes it illegal?
Because the state didn't come in, or the county didn't come in and say this was put in properly. Well, I understand the protections of that. You don't want some janky company coming in and doing something, because we are talking about gas that could blow up your house.
And your neighbor's house, if you had.
And your neighbor, and the entire forest. I get that.
If you had neighbors, that is.
Yeah, I do have them, but they're like 3 and 4 acres away. But when these guys were putting the lines in, I was out there watching them. Each joint, each connection, I watched them check for leaks. I routinely check that, and that's something that doesn't happen after the fact. I'll go out there and I'll put a little soapy water on there, make sure that nothing's bubbling and I don't have a leak going, because I don't want my house to blow up either.
Well, precisely.
But why? I mean, why are you going to charge me $1,000, $1,000 frigging dollars to have someone come in and go, "Yep, it's fine."
They wanted to charge you $1,000.
Oh yeah. Oh, home inspections, where someone just comes in, walks around with a clipboard and just ticks off a few things. That's $600. You were here for 15 minutes.
Because as a Brit, we wouldn't stand for that. We wouldn't.
I obviously didn't either.
But here's the thing, though. We understand that inspections take place, and we understand that inspections can come into like low 3 figures. But 4 figures for an inspection, we would just say we wouldn't stand for it.
Yeah, it's cost prohibitive. You can't tell me that person's salary, you paid that person $1,000 for 5 minutes of work. And, I don't understand, especially when the left, talks about the 1%. It's like the state is the 1% most of the time. Talk about a ripoff. You want to sit there and bitch about how much Jeff Bezos is making? How about how much the state is fucking making? For something as simple as that. That should have been like $30. Here you go. Now get out. Everything's fine. Go away. Why is it cost prohibitive to be able to put in a different source of energy for something? I don't understand.
As I say, my father works in the construction industry, and he was working on these isolated property ones. And this had nothing. It was just a shed, almost, that was made of bricks. It's been there for a couple 100 years. And everything had to be installed in it. And we're talking everything here. So we're talking mains water, we're talking mains electricity, mains gas, television line, internet line, everything you could conceivably imagine which you would consider a basic utility. So sewage lines and everything had to go into this place. And it was an absolute nightmare to get everyone to go up there. But what happened was the council came along in one day and inspected all of it in one go in the UK, which is amazing efficiency. I have no idea how much it cost, but my father was amazed that one person came up there on one day and inspected all of it in one go.
Yeah, that is impressive.
But, and for complex projects like that, I can understand needing somebody to sign off.
Mm-hmm.
But it shouldn't be that it is used as a boon for the authority to charge whatever they like. Take parking charges. On-street parking charges in some parts of Britain are an exorbitant amount. You
mean to just park there, or a violation for parking somewhere you shouldn't?
No, just to park there.
Oh, okay.
Outside your own home.
Okay.
So, Westminster City Council make hundreds of millions of pounds a year on parking charges. Brighton City Council make millions and millions of pounds on parking charges. Those are the two that come to mind because they make the most amount of money per year just to park outside your own front door. And it's things like this that turn people off from what are legitimate aims and interests of a government. Yes, I understand that roads need to be maintained and stuff. But when you're making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions off of people just to park outside their own home. Really?
Yeah.
People are probably going to get to that bit and go, she's just ranting. Yes, I am a bit of a ranter today. But it's where I see the government has slightly gone round the loony bin.
Yeah. Fees, charges, like with our parking, it's like, we've got a meter and you put a quarter in and you get 30 minutes.
We have that too.
Oh, do you? Okay. So how does the other work? Is it like...
So say I want to park outside my own home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a controlled parking zone, as it's called.
Okay.
So I need a permit to park in this controlled parking zone.
Oh.
And I then have to say to the council, yes, I live here, here's my car registration, I've lived here for so long, and I have so many cars, here's my other car registration, etc. I have to pay them a fee every year just for the privilege of parking in the street outside my own home.
Whether you do it or not. You may not. You may not park outside your...
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah, that's kind of sucky.
But yeah, this leads on quite to our final point today, which is misusing the state. And trying to misuse the state to impose your own form of identitarianism, identity politics on people. And it infects political parties and infects the political system. I live in the United Kingdom, and it is colloquially known as Turf Island. Those of you unaware of what a TERF is, this is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. And these people that don't want me to exist, don't want me to participate in public life, don't want me to participate in... For those of you who are new to this and don't realise that I'm a trans woman, I'm doing well. But I live in a part of the world with a large concentration of individuals that don't want me to exist. And you're probably thinking, you can't be serious. But, believe you me, it really does happen.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they are using the state itself, and there are members of the government who are using the apparatus of the state in the UK to try to further this identity politics. The England football team played in the Euro 2020 final, and people rightly said that they are a picture of what modern England is. Immigrant parents, mixture of races, mixture of marital statuses, you name it. And then you have the government saying, oh yes, it's fine to go and shout abuse at the players when they're doing certain political protests on the pitch. Because the Football Association have an anti-racism campaign. Football Association, they're entitled to do that. They're the governing body. They're not an arm of the government. And the players optionally choose to take part in it. And the government was condemning the players for optionally choosing to take part in it and saying that fans that were hurling abuse at them were good to do so. If that's not using the power of the state to either further your own identity politics or to try to say that your identity politics are better than somebody else, I don't quite know what is.
To me, it's more than just a mild irritation. Do I dislike? I mean, we're seeing a level of it right now that is shocking. It's absolutely shocking, and I hate to have to bring him up, but it's the identity politics of the Donald Trump party, because
good old Johnny T.
That's what it's become. We have people, and going without going into the conspiracy points of he won and this, that, and the other thing. It's being so entrenched in one individual, and without trying to equate it to a little Austrian man with a funny mustache,
or a little man in North Korea.
Yeah, because that gets overused. Overused.
It really does.
But it's an illustration of being married to that.
The cult of.
Okay, and I was going to try not to go there, but yeah.
But it is the simplest way to describe it.
It is. And because I don't want to be insulting, because I'm sure there are some people that really still firmly are in that camp that are very well-intentioned.
And I have nothing against the individuals who have genuinely reached this position, having studied all of the options and have gone, I agree with this.
Right.
What I have a problem with, and what I think Leslie's trying to get at here, is I have a problem with people who use it as an excuse and use it as a crutch to zoom in her camera when it gets the feel for doing so. And then zoom out when it feels like I do apologize. I'll start that rant again.
Yeah.
But people who use it as a crutch and use it as an excuse to get away with A, not understanding what they're fighting for, and B, just to attack the people they dislike.
Right.
That is the elements that we dislike in cult-like land.
Right.
It's not the people who have come at this organically and the people who are natural conservatives or people who are natural nationalists or people who genuinely believe in what Donald Trump is trying to do. It's the people who are associating with these elements, these core elements, who are people who are there for genuine reasons, who are running around creating violence, running around with ridiculous notions that don't have any sense in reality. And these people have allowed themselves to become detached from reality and detached from going, why am I here in the first place?
And the inability to be accepting of, and I don't want to use the word tolerance because, again, that's been overused. And if I'm different than you, I have lots of differences with staunch Republican Trump supporters. It's not an attack. I don't want to come for your religion.
Nope.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't want confrontation with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
What I want is I want to be able to lead the life that I want to lead without that life being interfered with by other people.
Right. And just because if I have a different idea than you doesn't mean that I am an all-out assault on your way of life. I don't know how it's gotten into, because, you know, a lot of the extreme right talks about, you're a victim. It's like, I have never heard more victim screaming than I have so vocally coming from that camp right now.
It's the same with the gender critical movement in the UK. Mm-hmm. Women are being silenced as they give their interview in national newspaper, on national television, on national radio, as they get all over the media. They're being silenced, you know. You can read about it here. You can listen to them here. You can watch them here. Right. As they are being silenced by those people who aren't actually saying anything, who aren't on the media. Those nasty people that I'm saying are silencing me, they aren't here to say that I'm this, that, and the other. But guess what? They're silencing me, even though I'm in national newspapers,
while they're sitting there saying it,
national television.
Yeah. And I see the same thing, especially, and what kills me is when, the right was like, oh, they're the First Amendment, they're silencing Donald Trump. It's like, these are private businesses that have rules and regulations that they were exercising and said, no, you can't play here. We don't like the way you're playing. You're throwing wet sand. That is bad. First Amendment specifically is to protect speech, the government from shutting you up. Specifically, the two are completely separate. Now, do I like that Donald Trump was deplatformed? Not overly thrilled with it, but if people were a little more media savvy, how to consume media, how to actually investigate and look at things, we might not have had the knee-jerk screaming reactions to his verbally vomiting just crap, just garbage. And unfortunately, people don't know how to look in or research, or it's like they hear something, it's like, that's enough. That's all I need to know. And you touched on that earlier with researching, looking into things, what is, how are you coming to the conclusion of what you believe? Do you have a reason? Or is it just the feels? Because it can't just be the feels, because those are quite often wrong. I do that sometimes. If something like really triggers me or gets me moving in a certain direction, I'm like, wow, I felt really strongly about that. So maybe I better not just go out and regurgitate it. Let me look into it a little deeper, because it was way too pulling. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because
it certainly does.
And again, it's like, do I agree with something 100%? If I do, then that's really a trigger for me. It's like, you better look into that, because I shouldn't agree with anything 100%. The
only person you should agree with 100% is yourself, and then you should still be looking at ways you disagree with yourself.
Yeah. And it's just so unfortunate that, people are, they're more emotional than critical. And I would just hope that it's like I feel it's example abortion. I feel very strongly about it in the sense that it's an extremely personal issue. This is a medical issue between that person and their doctor, or that person, their God and their doctor.
That person, their spouse and their doctor.
But
or
that's it.
Their partner or whoever they are.
Exactly.
Whoever the other person involved in the pregnancy, should there be any other
That's
person
it.
or people. And that's all it should be. There was one politician, I don't like to bring up individual politicians, but during the Democratic presidential primaries in 2020, Pete Buttigieg went on Fox News and did one of their debates. And he was given a question. What do you think about the increase in the number of late-term abortions? And he said it's horrible. Because this is the most difficult decision that any woman will ever have to make. They've probably named that child already.
Mm-hmm.
They've probably picked out the crib, picked out the clothes, had a baby shower.
Mm-hmm.
And now somebody has probably come up to them and gone, "We're terribly sorry, but for reasons that are outside of our control and your control, this pregnancy cannot go to term." It's usually not a case of somebody on a whim going, "I'm 36 weeks pregnant," or "I'm 28 weeks pregnant." Because at these stages, you should, under all reasonable circumstances, be aware that you are pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And when the debate is phrased in such a way to demonize those people that are going through the most difficult moments of their life potentially, when they have undergone months of trauma already, not necessarily negative trauma, but being pregnant is a traumatic experience.
Sure.
What changes happen to a woman's body?
Yeah. Changes for life.
Yeah. And to then turn around and say to somebody that medical necessity has said that you require an abortion. Do you really want to turn around to that person who may have picked out a crib, may have picked out the baby seat in the car, may have made all the arrangements, had the baby shower, told everybody that instead of you having a healthy baby, you're going to have to either potentially undergo a traumatic experience that may result in severe risks to you and or the baby may not survive.
Right.
Why are we getting involved in that? Why are we, as a society and as a government, interfering between the decisions made by a patient and their doctor? Why are we doing that?
It should be sacrosanct. It should be one of the decisions between a patient, a doctor, a family. It ends there.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You don't, and this we're not even just talking about abortion. Puberty blockers. This is an issue.
I'm glad the non-trans person brought that up.
It's your body. It's your health. It's your choice to determine who you want to contract to make these decisions with you. In a sense, I don't even like, in some cases, having to be like here in the States, procedures have to be within an insurance preferred provider in order to be able to utilize your insurance. Okay, example. I had a bilateral mastectomy. Breast cancer ran in my family rampantly. I had scares of suspicious lumps that they had to go in and do a needle aspiration. And let me tell you, when you're a double D, that shit ain't fun. They're driving a needle into your breast to pull out fluid. It was just awful. So my doctor goes, don't even do self-examinations on yourself. There's so much fibrous, cysty material in there. She goes, I can't even tell the difference. So I was approved to get a reduction. And I called a plastic surgeon within, my network. And I said, hey, I got approval. And they're like, sure, we can get you down to a B. I said, no, you don't understand. I want them gone. And this woman, a woman, mind you, told me, oh, honey, you don't want that. Hey, what? How? You just told me what I want to do with my own body. Screw you. So I had to go out of network to a gender reaffirming surgeon to get a bilateral mastectomy, something that was completely approved by my doctor. And I had to pay for it all because it was out of network.
And that is...
It cost me $7,000. I had to take out a second fucking mortgage to do this because of somebody else's, oh, honey, no, what? You should have done it. I have approval from my doctor. Even if I didn't have approval from my doctor, aside from the fact that my tits were just time bombs anyway, I hated the things, they're heavy, they're hot, they sweat. I wanted them gone anyway. And it shouldn't come down to, somebody's idea of what you should be able to do with your body. My doctor and I talked about it. I got the thumbs up for it. It should have happened without having to go into major debt.
And I think that's a very apt place to conclude today. If you need any help or support with any of the issues raised during this discussion, we will provide some links to those in the description.
We'll put the platform links up, link to the Facebook page if you're watching this on YouTube, and if it's
if you are listening to this on a podcast, there will be some in the description of where you can collect it.
Okay. So when do we want to talk again?
Soon. I would like to talk again soon.
Yeah,
but I think that after today's discussion, I'm going to need a large cup of tea. Yes. I do hope that our audience undertake some self-care today, because we have discussed some very serious issues. We may have started on some light notes, but we ended on some very heavy notes.
Yeah.
And we thank you all for listening to us today. It's never easy to have these discussions. And we thank you.
Yes, very much so.
Until next time.
Take care. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. And we'll see you again soon.